What if most Westerns were never meant to last? Quentin Tarantino has never hidden his contempt for the genre's filler, safe cowboy myths, clean heroes, empty vistas. Instead, he's spent decades pointing to a very specific bloodline of Westerns that actually mattered. These are the films that shaped his instincts, his violence, his rhythm, ranked now from most Tarantino to least. This is where it begins. Number 10. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966. If Quentin Tarantino had to choose a single film to explain his entire philosophy of cinema, it would probably be this one. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly isn't just his favorite Western, it's the one that taught him how movies should breathe. Sergio Leone stretches time until it becomes unbearable, then snaps it with sudden, operatic violence. That tension, waiting, watching, daring the audience to stay, is Tarantino's signature move. Every character here is morally compromised. There are no clean hands, no righteous crusades, just survival dressed up as honor. Tarantino has repeatedly praised how Leone turns greed into mythology. The Civil War backdrop isn't noble, it's absurd, chaotic, and cruel. Soldiers die for nothing while opportunists profit. That worldview runs straight through Reservoir Dogs, Inglourious Bastards, and The Hateful Eight. And then there's the violence. Not constant, not realistic, meaningful. Each gunshot lands like punctuation after a long, agonizing sentence. Tarantino learned that restraint is power. You don't spray bullets, you earn them. The final standoff is the most Tarantino moment ever filmed by someone else. Faces, eyes, hands, music screaming louder than dialogue. Time slows until the audience feels complicit. Tarantino didn't copy this scene, he absorbed it. He rebuilt it across his entire career. This isn't just a Western, it's the blueprint. Number 9. Django, 1966. This is the film where Tarantino stopped being a fan and became a disciple. Django is rough, mean, and unapologetically ugly. Mud replaces sand. Coffins replace saddles. Hope is something you carry only if it doesn't slow you down. Tarantino didn't borrow this film's name for nostalgia. He borrowed its attitude. The original Django isn't a hero in the traditional sense. He's broken, haunted, and visibly tired of violence even as he uses it. That contradiction fascinated Tarantino. It's the same emotional engine that drives characters like Butch Coolidge and Dr. King Schultz, men who know killing is wrong but know the world won't let them stop. What Tarantino truly loves here is the cruelty without apology. Enemies don't die cleanly. Victories don't feel triumphant. Django drags a coffin through hell not because it's cool, but because it's necessary. That grim practicality shows up again and again in Tarantino's work. The film's political edge also mattered. Django doesn't pretend the Old West was fair. Power belongs to the brutal. Justice is improvised. Tarantino would later expand this idea into full-blown historical revisionism, but the seed is right here. This is exploitation elevated into myth, and Tarantino never looked back. Number 8. The Great Silence, 1968. If The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is Tarantino's Bible, The Great Silence is his forbidden scripture. He has openly called it the most shocking Western ever made, and for good reason. This film doesn't just reject Western mythology, it executes it. Set in a frozen wasteland instead of sunlit plains, the film feels hostile from the first frame. Silence isn't just a stylistic choice, it's a moral vacuum. Heroes don't win here. Evil isn't punished. The ending doesn't resolve anything. It annihilates the audience's expectations. Tarantino loves this film because it proves a dangerous idea. Audiences will sit with despair if you commit to it fully. There is no last-minute redemption, no moral loophole. Violence doesn't cleanse the world, it confirms how broken it already is. The villains aren't charismatic outlaws, they're bureaucratic killers, legal, sanitized. That detail obsessed Tarantino, who would later build entire narratives around the idea that systems, not individuals, are the true monsters. The Great Silence taught Tarantino that cinema doesn't owe comfort, It owes truth, even when that truth hurts, especially when it hurts. Number 7. Once Upon a Time in the West, 1968. This is Sergio Leone's most patient film, and that patience is exactly what Tarantino worships. Once Upon a Time in the West moves like a funeral procession, slow and deliberate, daring the audience to lean in instead of checking out. Tarantino has praised its opening sequence endlessly, 10 full minutes of tension built from creaking wood, buzzing flies, and human discomfort. No dialogue, no action, just time weaponized. For Tarantino, this film proves that plot is optional if atmosphere is absolute. Characters don't explain themselves. They arrive fully formed. Harmonica's mystery, Frank's cruelty, Jill's quiet resilience. These aren't arcs, they're states of being. Tarantino would later adopt this approach, creating characters who feel mythic the moment they step into frame. Violence here is sparse but devastating. When it happens, it feels inevitable rather than shocking. That inevitability fascinated Tarantino. It's not about surprise, it's about dread. You know something terrible is coming, and Leone makes you wait until you can't breathe. The film also dismantles the romantic West. Railroads bring progress, but progress is ugly, corrupt, and merciless. The Old West isn't dying heroically, it's being bulldozed. That bitter historical awareness echoes throughout Tarantino's later work, where eras end not with triumph, but with blood and compromise. This is a Western as elegy, and Tarantino listened. Number 6. The Wild Bunch, 1969. If Leone taught Tarantino patience, Sam Peckinpah taught him violence with consequences. The Wild Bunch exploded the Western by showing gunfights not as heroic punctuation, but as catastrophic events. Tarantino has called Peckinpah one of the few American directors who understood that bloodshed should feel tragic, not triumphant. What Tarantino respects most is the film's moral exhaustion. These men aren't chasing justice or land, they're chasing relevance in a world that no longer wants them. Every shootout feels like a suicide pact with history. That fatalism runs straight through Tarantino's films, especially in characters who know they're already doomed. The editing mattered too. Peckinpah's slow motion isn't stylish, it's accusatory. It forces the audience to watch bodies collapse over and over until violence becomes unbearable. Tarantino would later adapt this idea, stretching moments of brutality so viewers can't escape their implications. There's also camaraderie here. Rough, flawed, deeply human. These men betray each other, but they also stand together when it matters. Tarantino has always gravitated toward ensembles bound by loyalty more than morality. The Wild Bunch doesn't ask if violence is wrong. It shows you the bill and walks away. Tarantino never forgot that lesson. Now, number 5. Rio Bravo, 1959. At first glance, Rio Bravo seems like the least Tarantino film imaginable. It's clean, comfortable, almost cozy, and that's exactly why Tarantino loves it. He has repeatedly praised it as the ultimate hangout Western, a movie where character interaction matters more than plot mechanics. What fascinated Tarantino is how little actually happens. The siege is secondary. The relationships are everything. People talk, joke, argue, wait. Tarantino built entire films around that same principle. Tension born not from action, but from proximity. Howard Hawks understood something Tarantino would later master. Dialogue is action. Every conversation shifts power slightly. Every pause means something. Tarantino doesn't imitate Hawks's style, but he adopts his philosophy. There's also a quiet confidence here. The film never rushes to prove itself. It trusts the audience to settle in. Tarantino has often criticized Westerns that over-explain or over-dramatize. Rio Bravo lets moments exist without commentary. This film taught Tarantino that genre doesn't require spectacle. Sometimes all you need is a room, a few strong personalities, and time. Number 4. Red River, 1948. Red River is the Western Quentin Tarantino respects because it refuses to flatter power. On the surface, it looks like a traditional cattle drive epic. Wide landscapes, hard men, long miles. But underneath, it's a slow, unnerving study of authority curdling into obsession. Tarantino has pointed out that John Wayne's character, Tom Dunson, isn't a comforting father figure. He's a warning. What makes Red River endure is how patiently it shows leadership becoming tyranny. Dunson starts as a man with vision and grit, the kind of frontier boss Westerns usually celebrate. But as the drive stretches on, his control tightens. Rules become punishments. Disagreement becomes betrayal. The film doesn't rush this transformation. It lets it rot in real time. Tarantino loves that kind of slow moral corrosion, where the danger isn't a gunman on the horizon, but the person already in charge. The cattle drive itself feels less like adventure and more like confinement. Men are trapped by distance, heat, exhaustion, and fear. Violence isn't frequent, but when it happens, it lands hard because it feels inevitable. That sense of pressure building beneath routine is something Tarantino would later echo in enclosed, character-driven films where tension simmers long before it explodes. Equally important is the generational conflict at the heart of the story. Younger men begin to question inherited authority. Loyalty fractures. Tradition stops being sacred and starts feeling dangerous. Tarantino has always been fascinated by moments when old rules lose their legitimacy, and Red River captures that transition without sentimentality. This isn't a heroic Western, it's a psychological one, and that's exactly why it earned Tarantino's respect. Number 3, The Searchers, 1956. For Quentin Tarantino, The Searchers matters not because it's iconic, but because it's deeply uncomfortable. This is John Ford stripping the Western hero of moral certainty and leaving only obsession behind. Tarantino has repeatedly focused on Ethan Edwards as one of the darkest protagonists the genre ever normalized, a man driven as much by hatred as by duty. The film disguises itself as a rescue story, but Tarantino sees it as something far more disturbing. Ethan's journey isn't about saving a girl. It's about confronting the possibility that he may not want her saved at all. Racism is not treated as a flaw to be corrected. It's an active force shaping every decision. The film never excuses it, but it also never cleans it up. That refusal to soften the ugliness is what Tarantino admires most. Visually, the film contrasts vast, majestic landscapes with a protagonist who feels spiritually cramped. Ethan is always out of place, too angry, too rigid, too consumed to belong anywhere. Tarantino has often spoken about characters who don't fit into the worlds they inhabit, and The Searchers is an early masterclass in that idea. The ending is famously ambiguous. Ethan completes his mission, but not his redemption. He remains outside the door, literally and morally. Tarantino values that lack of closure. The film doesn't reassure the audience that everything is healed. It suggests that some damage doesn't go away. It just stops being visible. That moral unease is why The Searchers stays with him. It's not a comforting myth, it's a reckoning. Number 2, My Darling Clementine, 1946. My Darling Clementine is one of the rare John Ford films Quentin Tarantino genuinely holds close, not for its legend, but for its atmosphere. This isn't a Western driven by plot mechanics or grand confrontations. It moves like a memory, drifting from moment to moment with a strange, melancholy calm. Tarantino respects it because it understands that myth doesn't need constant action to feel powerful. The film's tone is what sets it apart. Violence is present, but it's subdued, almost weary. Gunfights don't feel triumphant, they feel like sad necessities. Tarantino has often said that restraint can be more haunting than spectacle, and My Darling Clementine proves that idea with quiet confidence. Characters here aren't defined by bravado. They're shaped by loneliness, transition, and the sense that the West itself is already fading. The town of Tombstone feels less like a place being built and more like one being remembered. That elegiac quality deeply appeals to Tarantino, who often frames eras as something already lost by the time the story begins. Even the famous shootout at the OK Corral is handled with simplicity and gravity. There's no operatic buildup, no indulgence. just inevitability. Tarantino values that refusal to glamorize history. It treats legend as something human and fragile. My Darling Clementine shows that Westerns can whisper instead of shout and still leave a mark. That quiet authority is exactly why Tarantino keeps returning to it. Number 1. The Tall T, 1957. The Tall T sits at the quiet end of Quentin Tarantino's Western canon, but that placement is deceptive. This is the film he often brings up not to impress casual fans, but to signal serious understanding of the genre. It's spare, controlled, and almost austere, everything Tarantino believes most Westerns fail to be. Directed by Bud Boetticher, the film strips the Western down to its skeleton. There are no sweeping subplots, no heroic speeches, no myth-making flourishes. The story is simple. A stagecoach robbery goes wrong, lives are trapped together, and tension grows minute by minute. Tarantino has immense respect for this kind of narrative economy. Nothing is wasted. Every scene exists to deepen character or escalate moral pressure. What truly fascinates Tarantino is the balance of power through dialogue. Violence is always possible, but rarely immediate. Characters talk, test, circle each other. Randolph Scott's hero isn't a gunfighter looking for glory. He's observant, restrained, and aware that survival depends on understanding people, not outdrawing them. That philosophy would later define many of Tarantino's most memorable confrontations, where words matter as much as weapons. The villain, played by Richard Boone, is equally important. He isn't cartoonish or unhinged. He's intelligent, reflective, and unsettlingly calm. Tarantino has often praised antagonists who feel human enough to be frightening, and The Tall T delivers one of the genre's most quietly menacing villains. There's also a moral clarity here that Tarantino respects. The film doesn't sermonize, but it understands consequence. Violence isn't stylish, it's final. Choices matter, silence matters, timing matters. The Tall T may not look like a Tarantino film on the surface, but it embodies his deepest beliefs about cinema: tension over spectacle, character over action, precision over excess. That's why it earns the final spot, not as an influence he imitates, but as one he reveres. Tarantino never loved Westerns as comfort stories. He loved them as pressure tests of violence, power, and myth. These films survived because they dared to unsettle, not reassure. Watch them in order, and you don't just see the West change. You see Tarantino being born.